Alrighty, we have our 3 pieces here, 2 of each of the 3 pieces, the 2 mouth pieces for the inside, the 2 cheek pieces for the inside, and 2 face pieces for the outside. We're going to set these aside for a minute and work on the cheek pieces to start with. I'm using a white inside and red outside, so I'm going to trade off the bobbin and the top thread for certain parts. Let's see if I can get the glare off of that at all. Okay, I'm going to take the 2 mouth pieces and sew them faces together with a 1/4 inch seam along the rounded edge. And I just used the edge of my presser foot, if you can see that there. I can use the edge of my presser foot to sew that 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to turn it around and zigzag along that same edge, because these are probably going to be washed so many times. Alright, and I'm going to trim all those edges, threads, and go over and iron. Alright, here we are at the iron, and I'm going to first iron that curved edge so that that seam allowance all heads to one direction. And then I'm going to turn that out and turn up a 1/4 inch along that flat edge. And then I'm going to move it because that spot gets really hot. I'm going to move it a little. And turn a 1/4 inch again, because I like to have a real finished edge there. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side of that. And, whew, ouch. I do set it for a hot iron. I like to have a nice crease. Alright, and then I've brought my other 2 cheek pieces over as well. And I'm going to, on their wider edge, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn a 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to turn a 1/4 inch again, trying not to burn my fingers. And on the last piece, I'm going to turn it up a 1/4 inch. And turn it up a 1/4 inch again. Alright, now we're going to go back over to the sewing machine, and we're going to take each of those pieces that we ironed the 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch, and we're going to sew right along the edge of that 1/4 inch. to finish that seam just with the straight edge. Alright, notice there's a little tail on those because of the point of it. I just cut that whole tail right off, make it a nice crisp edge. Okay, are we having fun yet? And we're going to do that to each of those 1/4 inch edges that we did. So just keep doing that until you have all those 1/4 inch edges hemmed like that. And if you get stuck sometimes on the sewing machine, you just start over. I don't know what happened there. You just start that edge over. And all right. I don't know why that's and on that last edge, likewise, do the same thing. So now you have now you have 3 pieces, because 2 of them you sewed together. You have 3 pieces, all with nice 1/4 inch turned hems on them, looking like that. Okay, so this one with the seam in it, and these 2 cheek pieces. Okay, now notice on all of these, because it's white, light colored fabric, I used white on the top and white on the bottom. I'm going to switch this now, the top thread, because I'm going to start sewing on red. This is going to be the inside, so I'm just switching to the top thread right now to match that red that I'm going to use on the outside piece. And for the inside seam, I'm going to just keep my bobbin the way it is, because in a minute I'll be sewing with that white on the bottom, so I want white to be on the bottom. So I'm going to sew with red on the top to match the outside and white on the bottom to match the inside. Alright, let's see if I can get that through there without messing it up. Okay, there we go. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing I did for the mouthpiece. I'm going to take this face piece and sew that rounded edge right sides together. And I'm going to go back over it with a zigzag stitch as well. Okay? And the same thing here, I'm just keeping my presser foot right along the edge there. That's how I get my 1/4 inch seam without too much hassle. And you can hear the dogs barking out there. That might be because Joe's here to pick up his mask, so I'm going to have to go check and see if that's the situation. So be right back. While we were out there checking for Carter, we also ironed that seam. And so I'm checking it out to see which is the nose part, and this is the nose part I have up. So the nose is a little longer than the other side of that curved edge. You see how it's really curvy right here. That's the nose edge. So I'm putting those noses faces together, and I'm making sure that that seam is matched up and the seams allowances are going in the opposite directions. And I'm going to pin that together. Then I'm going to go and do the same thing to the other side of that, fitting those faces together and running those seams right up to each other and those seam allowances in the opposite direction, so it doesn't get too bunchy, especially on that side where we're going to put the pipe cleaners. All right, once I have that in place, then I'm going to pin this edge. I'm going to put 2 pins, one halfway over and one right on the 1/4 inch hem that I made. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing to the other 3 sides. So halfway over and in the 1/4 inch hem. And turn it back to the nose side, halfway over, and one in the 1/4 inch hem. And the other side of the nose, halfway over, and one in the 1/4 inch hem. All right, so you should have 5 pins along the top and 5 pins along the bottom, putting the mouth to the face, right sides of fabric together. All right, now turn it to the edge and take your cheek piece, and making sure that likewise the steeper part is going to the nose, and fit that right sides together right along that back edge, and just put 2 pins in along that edge just to hold it good and snug on the edge. Okay, and then turn it and fix that edge there so it's nice and clean. And when you get to the place where you put that pin in the 1/4 inch, pull it out and make sure it goes through both fabrics. And when you get that place where your 1/4 inch meets up, then take that halfway pin and stick it in that 1/4 inch place, like that. Okay, so do you see how that's done along the edge? You have one at the end and then one in the 1/4 inch for the under piece and one for the 1/4 inch on the top piece. And then we're going to do that same thing along all the other 4 edges. So I'm going to stop and let you get that done, and then we'll meet back up. All right, so it should look like that. All the edges. This you can see is going to form the pocket. All right, we have right sides together, and we're going to go back to the sewing machine now and sew all the way around. So it doesn't matter which edge you start with. I like to start with that. It's too glary, isn't it? I don't know how to get that so it's not glary. I like to start with that end seam myself. I don't know why. And make sure, because the last thing we were doing was zigzag. Make sure you turn in that stitch back to straight. And then sew a 1/4 inch along all the way around without stopping continuously. And turn when you get to the corner. My cutting wasn't that marvelous. And taking the pins out as you go. Sewing through all the thicknesses by those 1/4 inches. All right, now clip the 4 corners. And I like to clip the nose piece because that seam allowance right there can get in the way when we put the pipe cleaner in. So trim that nose seam down nice and close there. All right. And now we're going to turn that inside out. Pick one of the pocket edges and just go all the way across. And we're going to go back over to the iron with that. Okay, here we are over at the iron. And I'm going to use my, let's bring this over closely. I'm going to use my crochet hook, a little tiny crochet hook, to get into those corners and turn them out really nicely. And if I need to, I can use my little seam ripper to go right into that corner and bring that tuck out. Okay? After I do that to all 4 corners, then I'm going to get a good iron on every one of those sides. And then I'm going to stick my hand in there and make sure that this nose crease is opened up all the way. So make sure there's no pleat in there between the fabrics. Make sure that's a really clean edge because we're going to sew that pipe cleaner into that edge. We need to make sure it's good and no pleats in there. And I'm going to do that same thing. Actually, this side is the nose edge. I'll do that same thing to the other edge so that it's all ironed really nicely. You see on mine, the white with the spring flowers is the inside fabric. Okay, here we are back at the sewing machine, and I have a 1-foot piece of pipe cleaner, and I'm going to fold that in half and twist the edges. And to help me do that, I'm going to get some little needle nose pliers because I'm actually going to twist those edges over so that they're not sharp and pointy. And I'm going to go all the way around with my pliers and test it with my fingers to make sure it's nice and soft. Okay? And then I'm going to twist that pipe cleaner over and over and over until it's all twisted together really good. And do the same thing to the other end I'm going to twist, and then I'm going to pinch really good with my pliers to make sure that's all pinched and twisted so that it stays together really good, because we're going to sew it into that seam really tight. So we want it really well twisted, and we want those raw, pointy, ouchy ends all in nice and smooth. Okay, once you get so you think you got it, and you want to run your fingers along it, make sure it's smooth, and then take your mask and stick it inside the pocket and pull it up so that it meets up with those two, the ends of it should meet up to those 2 1/4-inch hems you made on that mouthpiece. And then run your fingers along it till you get to the center, right where that nose piece is. And make sure you have the right edge up. Did you see what I just did? I put it on the wrong side. So I'm going to slide that over to the nose side. See how the nose kind of has this little cup? That's how you can tell it's the nose side. And how I could tell that wasn't the right side I was in. All right, let's do that again. Match up those sides and then go towards the center and make sure it's nice and snug into that nose piece. And put a pin, make sure you put the pin on the outside, because we're going to top stitch this and we don't want to have our pins on the inside. Okay, so I took that pipe cleaner and I stuck it right into that top edge and made sure it was smooth on the top and put a pin in it. And I'm going to do that same thing along that left edge, and I'm going to put a pin right by that 1/4-inch hem on the edge of my pocket. I'm putting these pins on the outside because I want to top stitch, and so I want to have those pins on the outside. Every once in a while I get a pin that doesn't stick. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, pulling that pipe cleaner up along that edge nice and snug and pinning that along that edge as well. And there we go. Okay, now I'm going to go from the outside and I'm going to sew the end of that, just past the end of that pipe cleaner. I'm going to sew back and forth across that 1/4-inch seam right on the pocket stitching, or close to it, to get started. So I'm just going to sew just a 1/4-inch up and a 1/4-inch back. Okay, just to give an end cap for that pipe cleaner. And I'm going to take that pin out, and I'm going to keep my fingers pressed up to keep that pipe cleaner right in the right place. And I'm going to keep the edge of the fabric along my edge of my presser foot there to keep a nice even casing for that pipe cleaner, taking my pins out as I go. So, you know, I kind of have a pleat in there. I'm going to poke that pleat out. I don't know how that got in there after all that careful placement, but if you see a pleat, let it out. So notice this finger is kind of keeping that pipe cleaner, while this backhand, you see that backhand? That backhand is actually doing the guiding more of the fabric while the front finger is keeping that pipe cleaner pinched out of our way as we stitch along that top nose edge. Okay, when we get to the end of the pipe cleaner, we're going to make a little end cap again, just forward and back, and then just continue around the whole rest of the mask with a 1/4 inch seam, just top stitching a 1/4 inch away from every edge, and just lifting your presser foot and turning at each corner. All the way around the mask until you get back to your original stitching. You gotta line that up, and that's it. And we're gonna clip those threads on the top and the bottom. And you see what I was saying about earlier about the bottom of mine is white, so I used a bobbin, a white bobbin, and the top is red, so I used a red top thread. Otherwise this would have red thread, and my sewing is just not neat enough to have a red thread on a white fabric. Okay, now for the same reason, I'm going to go ahead and switch out that bobbin now to red as well, because I am going to be going on red and red. Red on top and red on bottom as I fold. So I'm going to switch my bobbin to red. So now I have red on top and red on bottom. So this has been a whole bobbin and top thread around the world. All right. Now for a child or a young person or a skinny-faced person, you might want to fold over maybe about that much, probably maybe close to 1 inch. But for more universal fit, I would say probably, well, for me, my thumbnail. Let's see if we have anything we can measure with here to give you a better idea. Maybe not. Okay, so I'm gonna just fold that over and stitch right along the edge like that, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Fold it over about probably 3/4, half to 3/4 of an inch, and that same thing to the other side. That makes your casing for your elastic. Now if you have somebody that the mask doesn't fit, you can adjust that length both by cutting it shorter and by turning over more. And there's lots of choices for elastic. This isn't my favorite one, but it is the one I was able to get on Amazon right now. So it's probably an 1/8 inch flat elastic. And I run it through there with a safety pin. If you use the little round elastic, the beading elastic, it's really nice because you can fit it right in that hole on your safety pin, and it makes this step really cool. But no biggie. All right, just run that elastic through that casing using that safety pin, and like that. And then I pull it up so that there's about a thumb's, probably 1 inch. And I leave about 1 inch so I have some space to tie it. And same thing, if you're making this for a fat-faced person, would have to be pretty fat-faced, fatter than mine, you might want to leave a longer elastic in case they need to adjust. Anyway, then just tie that elastic. And I like to get the nut. I want to leave room if they need to adjust it, but mostly I want to get the nut pretty close to the end, about like that. And then slide that knot back inside the casing so that it's almost flush with that edge. And do the same thing to the other side now. So we can chat about something else. How fantastic our Governor Newsom is, and would we vote for him if he was the third party vote? Oh, slap my face for saying that. Geez, I just think he is the president right now, so I just try to pretend he is. I'm so glad to be a Californian. All right, and do the same thing. Knot it off. And there we have it. Now, there's several things that people have talked about online, and you can look at online and see what's best at the time. But this pocket is to put a filter in. So some people say shop towel. You can put your COVID mask. If you have a 95 or whatever, you can put other masks inside here. Or I've heard even coffee filters. So I'll show you how to do this now. You want to make sure you wash this, by the way, before you put it on. I'm going to put it on right now just to show you that the important part on putting it on is to adjust it so that the nose, excuse those wrinkles and dark circles and red eyes, my dog was up fighting with raccoons last night, should fit really snug along here. So sometimes you have to put it up a little bit and then clip it back to make it fit snug. It should fit so that your glasses don't fog up when you put them on. So breathe out, and your glasses shouldn't fog up if you've done the right thing. Alrighty then, good job. There you have it.